Hi everyone, so today we will be talking about the immune system. I will be introducing the immune system to you. So we will be talking about some big questions like what is the purpose of the immune system? How does the immune system function? Why do animals have a more developed immune system? We'll probably get to the first question and a little bit of the second question in this video. So let's start off with the basic idea of immune system, which is just fighting the enemy within. So any pathogen, which are just foreign organisms that are trying to infect you, by fighting those pathogens, your immune system becomes activated, okay? So in this image right over here, what you can see is something that's called a phagocytic leukocyte. Leukocyte is just a fancy term to say white blood cell. Phagocytic is any cell that is able to kill other foreign organisms or kill other foreign bodies simply by eating them or engulfing them into their cells. Okay, so phagocyte, phago is eating, so it's a cell that is able to eat other cells in order to help you combat disease. Okay, so let's start with the immune system. The immune system is super highly developed in mammals, so we have a much more complex immune system than what a bacteria would have. There's two types of immunity. You are born with a non-specific type of immunity, so it's an immunity that attacks anything and everything, and that is called the innate immunity. And again, as I said, it's an immunity that you're born with. As you grow up and as you are in contact with different types of pathogens, different types of foreign organisms that are trying to infect you, you create or you develop a specific type of immunity, an immunity specific to different pathogens, and that's called adaptive immunity. As you guys already know, the immune system is highly correlated and connected to the lymphatic system. And that's why you have an image of the lymphatic system here, where the lymphatic system can actually transport and produce all of the immune system cells to help you combat disease. So when you're talking about immune system, you're talking about defense, right? And there's different types of lines of defense within your immune system. So if you want to think about a little bit about a castle maybe, or about an area that wants to be protected against foreign invaders. Let's say it's a medieval castle and there's a war going on, okay? So you can have different lines of defense, right? The first line of defense is just a non-specific barrier. So it's not actually going to be a barrier specific to the people that are trying to invade. It's a barrier that keeps everybody out, right? So what is a non-specific barrier in this type of metaphor? They're just external walls, right? It can be walls or moats. If you don't know what a moat is, go ahead and check it out in Google. There are these water bodies that would surround castles, and their goal was to keep people or keep invaders out, right? So they're just these barriers. Besides having these barriers, and we're going to talk about how they relate to our immune system and what our barriers are in a second, you also have a second line of defense, and it's also non-specific. So they could be, for example, the patrolling soldiers or the patrolling agents that are within the castle, and their internal defenses. So they're no longer just the wall outside, they are internal defenses. In our immune system, they're specifically called leukocytes, or the image that I showed you before at the very beginning of the lecture, which are phagocytic white blood cells. They're cells that are able to eat up anything and everything that is foreign. They're non-specific about what they eat up and what they try to attack. Okay, and your third line of defense is your adaptive immune system, what you actually start developing as you grow older, and it's extremely specific. They could be, for example, in this idea of a war, they can be an elite trained unit, so it's a unit that knows specifically what they're combating, and they will only combat a specific type of invader. Okay, not any type of invader, just one specific type of invader. And they're actually referred to as lymphocytes, and we talked about this in the lymphatic system. They're a specific type of white blood cells, and these lymphocytes can produce antibodies. We've talked about this in the blood type subunit that we had, how you can produce antibodies against different types of bloods. You can also produce antibodies against foreign invaders. And in this idea of the adaptive immunity, or of your elite trained unit that only attacks specific invaders, these units would be the B cells and the T cells. We're going to talk about them in a second. So let's start off with our first line of defense, non-specific, just a barrier. What are the barriers that we've got in our bodies to help us avoid any sort of entry from different pathogens? We've got skin. Okay, that's our first barrier or first line of defense. We also have mucus. Okay, remember, in the respiratory system, your entire respiratory tract is filled up with mucus, and it's also filled up with these hair-like projections, that are called cilia. And the function of those cilia and that mucus is that if any pathogen were to get stuck in your respiratory tract, these cilia can move that mucus up and expel it out of your system, so that it doesn't actually go into the internal organs and infect you in a very severe way. Okay, you also have hair. Hair is actually a very easy way to stop things from getting inside your body, and you have earwax in different cavities also in your ears to avoid things from getting inside your body. You are also able to eliminate stuff that have gotten in, so that's why you cough, that's why you sneeze, urination whenever you are getting sick and you pee a lot. That's also a way that you're able to get rid of some pathogens that are infecting you. Diarrhea is a way that you can get rid of a lot of pathogens that are infecting your digestive system, and that's how your body responds to getting rid of everything. Okay, you also have different changes in pH. The scale of pH in different parts of your body can change so that it can protect you from different things that do not do well in different pHs. So an example of this, for example, is your stomach acid. So the reason why your stomach is such a great killer is because, first of all, everything that you're consuming, all of the food that you're consuming, can potentially contain pathogens that want to infect you. So in order to avoid any serious illness or any serious infection, your digestive system has to have a mechanism to kill those pathogens before they actually infect any of your cells. So when you eat something, when it gets to your stomach actually has a very low pH. That means that it is super acidic. Okay, so a lot of pathogens, a lot of bacteria, viruses, such, do not like acid environments. So when they're in contact with that acidic pH, they're actually going to die. They're going to be killed. So in that way, your stomach has that protective mechanism to avoid you from getting infections. You also have something that are some proteins that are called lysosomes. So there are these proteins that the word in science, lyse, is break. So they're proteins that their function is to break things. Okay, so if you produce a lot of these proteins, what they can do is that they can identify different bacteria, and they can simply start breaking all of these pathogens down, and in that way inactivate them. A place that has a lot of this, or different fluids that have a lot of this, is, for example, saliva has a lot of lysosomes. So again, it complements your stomach acid, so it breaks bacteria or pathogens down the minute that it gets to your mouth. Your tears, sweat, different types of bodily fluids also contain these lysosomes to be able to make sure that they are breaking everything down and keeping you safe and not allowing any bacteria or different pathogens to infect you. The second line of defense is, again, non-specific, so it's just to keep things out, okay, and to keep things from attacking. So this is no longer just external. It can be something that you're producing internally, and the idea is to attack pathogens, but it's non-specific because it doesn't actually remember what it's attacking. So it's just attacking anything that's foreign. It's not actually doing it consciously. It's not remember specifically what it's attacking you. It's not giving you any memory of how to attack these specific invaders. It's just trying to attack anything and everything that it comes around. Okay, so these types of nonspecific patrolling cells, let's say, they're called leukocytes. So in general, they're white blood cells. They're cells produced by your immune system. And they're these phagocytic cells, as I told you guys at the beginning of the video. So this is the same image that we saw at the beginning of the video. And these could be these tiny little things can be bacteria. And this large, massive thing is a phagocytic white blood cell. And what it's trying to do to this bacteria is it's trying to engulf the bacteria inside its own cell so that internally it can break it down and kill it. Okay, so it eats, let's say, the bacteria so that internally it can break it down. What are some of these phagocytic cells? What are some examples of these phagocytic cells? The most common one that we're going to talk about are called macrophages. Okay, macrophages, sorry. This is the one that we're going to talk about a whole bunch, and it's the one that is pretty much one of the most important white blood cells because it's literally going around your entire body and attacking and engulfing and killing or eating all of the foreign organisms that it can find or all of the pathogens that it can find in your body. Okay, you also have neutrophils, natural killer cells, dendritic cells. All of them are phagocytic cells. All of them have the ability to eat the bacteria, to eat the pathogen, and destroy it within. Okay. You also produce in your second line of defense something that's called antimicrobial proteins. So they're proteins. They're very similar to these lysosomes that you're producing. Okay, and they're just proteins that are circulating throughout your entire body and trying to attack foreign invaders. They're activated by foreign invaders and they're trying to attack foreign invaders. You also have a specific response, and probably most of you guys have encountered this, which is just inflammation, right? That has to do with your immune system. And what the inflammatory response is that it increases your body temperature. It increases something that's called capillary permeability, and it attracts these macrophages or neutrophils into the site that is going through the inflammatory response. So if we can see an example of the inflammatory response, you can see it right over here. Let's say that you get an injury from a pin or anything like that. Okay, so since you've gotten an injury, there's now an exposed area in your body, a broken skin in your body, so it could get some bacteria right inside there. So what happens is that, first of all, the blood vessels, they release this injury releases a bunch of chemical signals. If you haven't heard about this is called histamine. Okay, these chemical signals. And what that does is that it dilates and increases the permeability of these capillaries right over here. So it opens up the capillaries and it increases the permeability of the capillaries, which means it increases the amount of things that can exit the capillary. So what are the things that are trying to exit the capillary and get to the area that has been injured? Well, you want these white blood cells, these phagocytic cells, these cells that can eat up all of the bacteria and avoid them from infecting any other cell in your body. So these phagocytes that are transported through these capillaries are able to exit the capillary and go into the area of the injury and make sure that it eats up any bacteria that could potentially have gotten in there. Okay. Finally, the phagocytes consume all of this bacteria and allow the tissue to heal. Now, when there's a dilation of these capillaries, what happens is that it makes these capillaries inflamed, right? It makes these capillaries swell up, and that's why it looks all red and puffy. We know that sometimes it's not just inflammation that occurs in a specific injury. Sometimes it doesn't even have to do with injuries. Sometimes it is simply that you have an infection, right? And it's a body infection. It's something that is causing you to be sick. So when that happens, you can also use the inflammatory response, but it's no longer just localized in a specific area. It can be all over your body. And when the inflammatory response is all over your body, that's when you get a fever. Okay, so when it's not enough for just a local response and it is something that's infecting you now, your entire body, you're going to have a system-wide response to that infection. And these cells that are able to consume all of these bacteria, these macrophages that are able to consume these bacteria, release a protein called interleukin-1. And what that does is that it triggers a specific gland in your brain. And you've heard about this gland because we talked about this and its role in the stress response, the hypothalamus. So it's a tiny gland in your brain. And what it does is that it readjusts the thermostat to raise your entire body temperature. So that's what a fever is. It raises your entire body temperature. And the reason why this high body temperature helps you helps give you a defense against what's infecting you is because high temperatures are not good for pathogens. So a lot of bacteria can't grow in high temperatures. So the minute that you increase the temperatures, you're inhibiting, you're stopping bacteria from growing. You also stimulate all of these macrophages to start doing their job better, to start consuming and destroying a lot of the bacteria that are infecting you. Actually, a high temperature in your body helps your tissues repair much faster, and it also causes your liver and your spleen to store iron, reducing blood iron levels. And how this helps you is that bacteria and a lot of pathogens actually need a lot of iron to grow. So if you can store it in places that are no longer accessible to that bacteria, then you stop the bacteria from growing and from producing further illness. Okay, so we're gonna stop there. So we've just talked about your first and your second line of defense. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys a reading as well. You're probably gonna do the reading before this video, and in that way you're gonna have a little bit of context as to what the immune system does. In our live session, we will talk about the third line of defense. So everything that we've talked about from in this lecture has been your innate immunity. So the immunity that you're already born with. It is non-specific. It's pretty much just trying to defend you from anything. What we will be talking about in our live session will be your adaptive immunity, or the immunity that is much more specific and that you actually develop as you grow older and you become more, you come in contact with more bacteria, more pathogens, and more things that get you sick. So hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, take some notes, okay? And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.